All right. So, um, with 10.0.5 coming out this Tuesday or a couple days ago, I've been sitting around playing on the new patch and the new changes and stuff like that. And obviously, um, I wanted to experiment a little bit because Fury did get buffed last minute, and I gotta say, it's a lot better than what we thought it was going to be. But what I find interesting after playing Fury Warrior is that now it feels like now as a Fury Warrior I am dying through D-stance, kind of like Arms Warrior was. And it made me realize that no matter how much healing that we have, you factor in Immortal Strike and dampening and whatnot, the healing is really not that good. So it feels like there's no active mitigation, just like there was for Arms Warrior, and it felt terrible. So now I've noticed that I'm starting to die through D-stance, and I stopped taking Invigorating Fury because I swapped some things around. Because obviously, like the build that I'm running is pretty different than Annihilator, where the old build was literally Annihilator, and you just spam Bloodthirst, Bloodbath, and that was like your main damage, and so was Rampage, and that was it, right? Well, this build that I'm running with Onslaught, and I got rid of Annihilator, where I still function with the same slam spec that Fury has, except now I'm running Onslaught, no Annihilator with Slaughtering Strikes, because I don't have to spam Raging Blow as much. It's more of like a fourth filler for me in this build that I've been running, but the build that I'm running is rather insane. Like even some of these damage breakdowns is kind of insane. Like this is from Solo Shuffle. I've been doing solo shuffles like pretty much all day, or trying to games all day, but the queues usually take like 20 to 40 minutes, so it is what it is. So I don't really have that many breakdowns because I do reset my data, but I will probably post some games of Fury after this to show you the damage potential that this build has. It's pretty crazy. Um, so if you don't know what happened, last minute Fury Warrior got buffed about 10 to 15% across the board, and then on top of that, Thunderous Roar was reduced by 50% in PvP, right? Originally. Well, they undid that, and now Thunderous Roar does full damage in PvP now. On top of that, with the Catalyst coming out, we have the 4-set, right? 4-set, this, as some people know, in PvE is not good. A lot of people in PvE complain that this 4-set is terrible and that nobody uses it. Well, in arenas, in PvP, this is kind of insane. Why? Because Execute actually cranks in PvP. Um, I believe Execute overall was buffed in PvP. I'll have to go back and check, or PvP, sorry. I'll have to go back and check how much it was buffed by, but like it actually hits pretty damn hard. And I started running Ash and Juggernaut because this thing is resetting literally like every 2 seconds, right? This thing goes crazy. Um, and you're probably asking me, well, God, you have so many buttons to press. Like, how are you? Like, are you losing damage on other abilities? Like, are you wasting your time? No, not. I mean, not really. No. Um, it's the amount of damage that I've been doing is through the roof in some of these games. If they've been on the longer end of things, where like I've been doing sustain anywhere between 40k to 90k DPS in arenas. Um, so with that being said, the build is pretty straightforward. You drop Annihilator because with Annihilator, your auto attacks would do additional damage, sure, which is pretty decent, and it also gave you more rage. But you would run Slaughtering Strikes, and it would give you a 2% damage buff, stacking up to 5 times on Slaughtering Strikes. Well, the way they made Onslaught, how it works in 10.0.5, is now it's kind of actually useful. It does 30% more damage, and you always become enraged for 6 seconds, and on top of that, you have Tenderize. Onslaught enrages you, and if you have Slaughtering Strikes, it grants you 3 stacks of Slaughtering Strikes. And Rage also now lasts 2 seconds longer. It's a pretty big deal too. Um, so you can kind of see where I'm going at with this, right? So using this build, you do not really have to use Raging Blow that often. It's more of like a downtime kind of filler because again, Slam is a longer cooldown, right? It's about 10 seconds, and then Tender or Onslaught is also a 16-second cooldown. So you will find times like in your rotation where you're still able to use all of your bloodbaths to get full damage out and still get your gushing wound. Your rampages on your burst will be pretty big. Like for example, what I like to do when I enter like the arena or like engage in combat, right, is that you always get enraged from using for always using Onslaught. Sorry, I keep forgetting the name because we never really used it, but now I'm starting to use it, and it's kind of insane. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like hit this dummy. Like obviously dummy is not accurate because you're not like fighting another player with versatility, but it is still rather insane. And of course, like my gear is not perfect either because I've spent like the last 3 weeks going from like arm, like from being geared as Fury at the start of the patch, right, to getting into arms stats because arms was better, but now I want to play Fury again because it's kind of interesting and actually kind of cranks. And don't get me wrong, both are really pretty decent specs right now, but I think with this spec, I think Warrior has a chance to be like solid A tier, like A tier to S tier, like both arms and Fury, right? Um, but from playing recently, Fury kind of feels like it dies through distance, just like Arms did prior to this patch when they got Ignore Pain. Arms Warrior feels a lot better, and you don't like just sit there and die as much. And Ignore Pain is really nice. You use it on cooldown; it's amazing. Anyway, this build is very straightforward. So like I'm gonna hit this dummy and just show you kind of like what I do to get into combat, like when I engage like an enemy at the very start, right? So we always get in range, so we never have to worry about it. And then we'll have 4 stacks of rampage, right? So like I would go in, do this, pop burst. You see what I'm saying? Big damage, sudden death reset, pump and sudden death reset. So now we have a little bit of downtime, sudden death reset, boom. We still have some damage, another Odin's Fury proc, there we go. Sudden death reset. Now this is good to like wait just a couple of seconds to let your execute go for other abilities, like to reapply Gushing Wound, to do Onslaught again. So I have some downtime, Raging Blow, Onslaught, Rampage, just an 80% damage buff on Rampage, okay? So it's not much different, this build. You're basically maxing your Rampage damage. It's very, very easy to do this. So like you'll have Rampages that are on the top end of doing some damage, and then you have Rampages that'll be on the lower end for doing damage because, you know, Onslaught is on cooldown. You might only get like 1 stack of Slaughtering Strikes because you're using Raging Blow, but it's pretty strong burst intervals, roughly around 16 seconds. And since you have Recklessness and Avatar for a considerable amount of time, you are able to get these giant rampages out and still doing big damage. And Onslaught itself does pretty big damage, right? So like, this is the execute damage. Obviously, it did a lot of damage because, again, you're fighting a dummy, so it will not be accurate. But this is about the amount of damage that it does to a player, around 50 to 60 like K usually. Maybe a little bit less if you're hitting into like a plate wearer. And I only pressed it 9 times, right? And you're basically getting like 100% crit chance because the 4 set that we have. So the reason why this is so strong with how many resets you're getting is I'm running Ashen Juggernaut instead of Annihilator. I'm running Ashen Juggernaut, so you get 10% critical strike chance to execute. Stacking up to 5 times. It lasts a really, really long time, and I'm talking long enough to the point where this is pretty much almost up the entire time. If you do not have this up, you're pretty much unlucky. And then if we look over here on the left side of the tree, I do not take Uproar because it reduces the cooldown by 30 seconds, which would make it a minute cooldown, which is, don't get me wrong, pretty good, but we don't really run Anger Management because Reckless Abandon is pretty good for our Bloodbath, right? It's just big damage, right? Which makes it just do more damage, right? So I stopped using Uproar, and I put more points into Cruel Strikes, which increases our crit chance by a very minuscule amount, but then it gives us critical strike damage of Execute, right? So this is just a 10% damage buff, and you're going to be critting with Execute literally all the time. So you have 50% from Ashen Juggernaut, you have 25% increased critical strike chance baseline for the 2 set for Fury Warrior, and then you have like whatever your like current crit is on top of that, Recklessness factored in. Like you're literally, this thing literally just crits all the time. Like it again from here, like it hit 18 times because main hand and offhand. I pressed it 9 times. It did not crit like a single time. It crit every single time. you have a 100% crit chance on execute. This thing cranks damage. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this build in the comments, and then I'm gonna put some gameplay for the end of this, so you guys can just kind of see like how it performs, and that's pretty much it. I think that Fury is a lot better than we thought it was. I think it has some survivability issues because healing again is kind of irrelevant when like if you're playing in like arenas, like dampening is pretty quick. If you factor in Immortal Strike, its mitigation is terrible. It's only healing, and then like going into that, like you kind of just die. Kind of like Arms Warrior did, where it only had D-Stance and parry, but it is what it is. It also doesn't help that they nerfed War Paint by 5% in PvP, so now it's only reducing damage by 5% when in Rage, which is fine. So basically, like, you kind of have to sit D-Stance, like, a lot more than you had done before, but it's whatever. I still think like, I think this could use Ignore Pain as well, and probably tone down some of their healing, for that simple fact. That I think taking Ignore Pain away from the other two specs of Warrior just made it kind of feel like ass. But anyway, with that being said, I just want to make this really quick video about this build that I'm running, and I think it has some pretty big potential. If you're still gearing for Fury Warrior and you have a ton of mastery and haste, I don't, because I have geared for arms. I have 2,000 crit. When you shouldn't, by the way. You need a lot of mastery as Fury, but it's because I can't afford to have multiple sets of gear yet because it's still early on in the season. Like Conquest cap is like 550 every week, but I just want to go ahead and make this and tell you guys that if you guys enjoy Fury, like, don't worry, there is still hope for the spec, and try to get your 4 set as best you can. Do your LFRs. If you do raid at all, do your raid lockouts, and just best of luck to you in your vault. Get your 4 set immediately if you do not have it already. And if you like Fury, dude, I'm telling you, this build is pretty insane. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video.